Chirpsookei.
Hello everybody and welcome back to yet another episode of WIAGW. Thank you my dude for the WIAGWNoise. You've been waiting a long time for that one, I'm sure, as has everybody. Hey, it's great to be back, everybody. I'm finally back post-RadCon, making WIAGWs. Still got a little work to do on that, but we're getting back to doing these at least semi-regularly. Perhaps even weekly. We'll see how it goes. But you know, it's been a little tough to get back into the swing of the things because there's just been this hole in my heart that I just can't fill. There's like an empty space over here that just has prevented me from coming back and just creating the way I used to. My muse is gone. Wait a minute. Do you hear something? What the hell is that?
It's everybody's favorite original character, Action Giraffe!
Oh my god, it's everybody's favorite original character, Action Giraffe! Chronically ill globetrotting superstar and personal best friend. What do you say, buddy? You want to co-host WIAGW with me for season 2?
I have AIDS.
Yeah! Hey everybody, guess what I did last night? I saw Avengers Infinity War. Now just so you know going in, I couldn't give less of a shit about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I haven't seen any of the Avengers movies, I haven't seen any of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I saw Iron Man and Thor each like a decade ago, and Ant-Man at some point in there. Other than that, I haven't seen any of the movies and know nothing. Also, I never read the comics. So normally I would have just let a new Avengers movie just pass me by. But there were rumblings among the stars that the main villain of Infinity War was someone a little special. Someone a little like me. Yeah, that's right. Thanos, the villain behind the whole Infinity War arc that's apparently been the motivation for like a lot of the events of the recent movies that led up to Infinity War, he is a villain with some interesting motivation. And to put it bluntly, he did nothing wrong. And while I've been hearing a lot of praise for Thanos and how he's a deeper character than most villains in this type of movie, there's also been a lot of criticism of the character for like the dumbness of his plan, how there are probably better ways of doing things, and I'm so interested and invested in the character and loved him so much in the movie that I want to take time and discuss his character. Because really, Avengers Infinity War is Thanos the movie. And I'm just gonna tell you right now, in the movie, basically none of the other characters mattered. Like I said, I've seen a handful of the movies here and there, but I don't give a shit about any of them. The best thing in the movie was like when Thor made his cool new axe and was smashing some dudes just because it looked kind of cool. But like, I would rather just skip all of that shit and just hear Thanos talk more about his world philosophy, because that's what I'm here for. Like I said on Twitter, I basically have no interest in the character drama or the majority of the action. Like, action is cool as a vehicle for ideas to clash. It's like when people can't reason anymore, then they use force to try to, you know, resolve things, and that's what Thanos does for his entire career as like a space tyrant dictator. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So just FYI, I know none of the backstory. I'm just basing things on this movie. As I said, haven't watched anything else, don't care. Just judging Thanos based on his presentation in this one movie. Here we go. By the way, spoilers for this entire movie. I'm ruining everything. So as I understand it, in this movie, Thanos is presented as like a space tyrant who has amassed a huge army by traveling throughout space and recruiting people to his cause. And he did this by sheer military might and willpower up to the point recently when he acquired a glove that allowed him to harness the first of the many Infinity Stones. So how did Thanos start out? Well, okay, in the movie it's discussed that Thanos was born on Titan. Thanos grew up in a world that was impoverished by a lack of natural resources, and as a result, there was starvation, there was pain, there was suffering, and Thanos had some pretty radical solutions to this idea. His solution was to kill half the population so that the other half may be able to divide up those resources and live better. Now, the people on Titan at the time thought he was a madman, but eventually, because they didn't listen to him, things went the way that he predicted, and that particular civilization fell into disarray and collapsed into nothingness. Thanos somehow survived this and apparently went on to amass an army in space and vowed to like never let that happen again because he was convinced that his philosophy was the correct one. And so basically Thanos has just been traveling throughout space, imposing these type of rules on civilizations. He will come to a planet and he will have his men murder half the population so the other half can enjoy the resources of that world. Now, I know I'm gonna sound a little bit like a madman, but I'm thinking philosophically here, so indulge me for a minute. When it comes to addressing the issue of overpopulation, does Thanos' method have a certain logic to it? Yes, it's obviously immoral, it's obviously got, you know, terrible ramifications, but like, it does immediately address the current issue in worlds with that problem. And Thanos' current quest in the movie is to collect all the Infinity Stones in his Infinity Gauntlet so that he can basically do this process just through sheer will. The Gauntlet with the Infinity Stones will let him just do this with a snap of his fingers because he will have like infinite power. He can just vaporize half the population of the universe. So essentially his plan is to limit the population so that the other half can survive and prosper, because at his heart, he's trying to do what's best for people. And I am not the first person to point out that this is exactly the same shit as the Anti-Spirals, Lord Genome, and Father Mogin from a little show you might have heard of called Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. I'm a little bit of a fan. So at this point, I can direct you just to go watch my Gurren Lagann analyses to see why those philosophies are not perfect. This, of course, puts Thanos into the camp of ascended villains whose logic is actually somewhat sound. Okay, but of course, now comes the time when I talk about all the obvious massive flaws with this plan. 1. It's not okay to just kill people. 2. Thanos' plan seems to involve enacting this solution on planets where this is not necessarily a problem. Like, for example, I mean, you can make a case that wiping out half the population on Earth would alleviate overpopulation in some areas. You know, in current day, when the movie takes place, the Earth is not facing any kind of overpopulation crisis that needs to be addressed in the film by eliminating half the population. Maybe some areas do, but wouldn't you want to then just localize the solution to those areas? And of course, there's number 3. There's a fundamental problem to the way that Thanos is approaching this issue, and that is that he's treating resources as if there is a cap to them. Which, don't get me wrong, there is a limit to the physical amount of, you know, let's say crops that can be raised on any one planet to provide for the population. If the Earth had, let's say, 1 trillion people living on it, that might be overcrowded. But from another perspective, capitalism itself is the enterprise through which wealth is generated basically out of nothing. Because when you've got 2 people specializing in different crafts and they trade between each other, they both end up with more than if each one had been splitting their efforts to produce the goods. I'm not gonna go into capitalism in full depth right now, but the point is, like, you can achieve more than the sum of your parts through trade, and Thanos doesn't seem to be fully incorporating that mindset. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure in some cases there are physically no ways to deal with the fact that there are just too many people and not enough resources, and so to him, to this, you know, guy who's not quite right, he thinks, okay, we'll just kill half of them. As if that is a real fix. I mean, no, it's not. The right thing to do is to provide more resources for those people, or possibly take them away and put them somewhere else where they can produce resources so they can survive. Which brings us to the final issue with Thanos' approach, which is kind of just a script writing issue. Thanos, by the end of the movie, acquires the Infinity Gauntlet and wipes out half of the population of the universe. My boy wins! And then he triumphantly walks out and watches the sunrise, thinking a job has been well done. But this is my question, and a lot of people have asked this. Why, if you have infinite power, do you not use the Infinity Gauntlet to create resources in whatever capacity you choose? You've got infinite power, so that you don't have to kill people. Like, why is he sticking to the same solution he had when he only had guns and bombs and knives to kill people, and applying that to now a situation where he has literally infinite power over reality? It's kind of like he didn't make that logical step forward to, oh, I've got infinite power, I actually can change my approach from when I was just a military dictator.
Now, presumably the reason for this, and the reason why I say it's a script writing issue, is because Thanos' original motivation is the comic books, as I've looked it up, is that he kills so many people as a way to woo Death, who is a physical female character in the Marvel Universe, and Thanos' plan is to get so strong, kill so many people so that she will love him and reciprocate the feelings he has for her. That made a little more sense in the comic books. Here, now that his motivation is more selfless, and he really just wants to make sure people are okay, this no longer works, and I think the scriptwriters just didn't really think it through.
Okay, so that's all the bad stuff about Thanos and why it doesn't make sense. Let's talk about the good stuff and why he's literally my new best friend. So Thanos is like the best villain ever, right? So everything that he wants to do is born out of compassion. Compassion that has been twisted down a false path of justice. Throughout the film, Thanos demonstrates a commitment to doing what he thinks is right beyond any superhero I have ever seen. And frankly, that involves sacrificing lives. Not just the lives of the people that he doesn't give a fuck about, lives that matter to him. Personally. So again, don't get me wrong, Thanos is a bad boy. He deserves to be slapped on the nose for killing trillions of people. But understand where he's coming from, okay? In the movie, there is a moment where in order to get one of the Soul Stones, he has to sacrifice what is described in the film as that which matters most to him. In this case, it is Thanos' daughter, Gamora, one of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And Thanos does so, with tears streaming down his face and feeling obvious remorse at having to do so. She dies, he gets the Soul Stone, but he ain't too thrilled about it. Doing this hurt Thanos so deeply, so incredibly fucking deeply, but he did it anyway because he thought it was best not for himself, but for the universe. We can argue all day that he's wrong, and I do, but we can still respect his motivation even if his methods were obviously wrong and evil. His will is utterly unbreakable, and by the end of the movie, he has lost everything he cares about except for the population of the universe that he legitimately, sincerely feels passionate care for. But it's just before this scene happens that my favorite exchange in the entire movie happens between adopted daughter and father. Thanos and Gamora are standing on the planet where they have to get the Soul Stone, and Red Skull, who happens to be there, doesn't matter, he tells them that you have to give up that which you love most. And Gamora, upon hearing this, bursts into laughter. She is so excited and happy. And it's because she says to Thanos immediately afterward, "You've never loved anything. You're not capable of loving anything, so there's no way for you to get this stone." Because remember, Gamora was from one of these planets that Thanos had wiped out half the population of, and he had essentially kidnapped her and made her his daughter. And every day, she resented him for it and let him know it. Even though he raised her to be strong, he cares for her. In his twisted mind, he's doing the right thing. But Gamora, coming from the bubble that she lives in of, adopted, kidnapped, abused daughter of this man, she doesn't think he's capable of love. And as a result of that, she's confident that he won't be able to do this. And so when he turns around and we see the tears on his face, as we understand that he loves Gamora more than anything, but he's willing to sacrifice her to get the Soul Stone, to protect the universe, he finds that will, and he throws her off the cliff, killing her. And he is in fact rewarded with the Soul Stone. The narrative itself is confirming for us that Thanos had correct intentions. There is no debate to be found here. He gave up that which he loved most for what he thought was right. His sacrifices are massive and obvious. The beatings he endures from the Avengers as he goes throughout the movies, the children that die along the way, the personal burden he shoulders. I'm not saying he's right, but what I am saying is that he's like Rossio. And just like Rossio, there's good intentions here. Incorrect methods, but good intentions. He's got a little bit too much weird utilitarianism even for me, but again, I can respect his intentions. And see, that mismatch of understanding between Gamora and Thanos, despite having known each other for 20 years, that is an important point that I want to elaborate on. Because I think one of the biggest problems in the world today is that people do not legitimately understand the perspective that other people are coming from, especially people with opposing political ideas. For example, people on the far left in America think that right-wingers are hateful, evil, backward people. People on the far left will accuse right-wing politicians of being outright evil. Let's say, for example, that a right-winger doesn't want to impose legislation to ban all guns from Chicago, let's say. To a left-winger, that looks like the right-wing politician wants to continue to allow gang violence to kill tons of people in Chicago. And we can understand why they think that. Maybe this person has some personal connection to these communities and feels like this would make a positive change. But consider the perspective of that right-winger who has a personal, deep-seated fear of the government becoming overly controlling, and let's not pretend there aren't signs of that. And so he feels strongly that the Second Amendment exists so that in theory, the people have an ability to fight back against a government, and so he just opposes legislation that restricts guns at all, and maybe thinks that, this legislation wouldn't even work anyway if it was imposed, and would do more harm than good. Conversely, let's say you've got a far right-wing person who accuses a left-wing politician who is in favor of abortion to be a child murderer. And again, the right-winger has a case here. They could perceive a human being to be something that's created upon conception, whereas this left-wing politician thinks, well, no, you see, it doesn't have a mind yet, a brain hasn't been formed, it's a collection of cells, you know, that whole argument. But still, to the right-winger, it's like there's a genocide going on every day in America. That's going to be upsetting, especially if they're deeply religious. And everybody knows how I feel about religion, but you see, that's not the point. It doesn't matter if you're left-wing, it doesn't matter if you're right-wing, none of it matters what side you're on. What matters is that we be charitable to the other sides of these debates. I have long been what I consider an extreme self-critic, where I always am doubtful of the opinions I have and continually try to examine how they might be flawed so I can get to ethical bedrock. All the memes and all the logical inconsistencies aside, if we look at the philosophical underpinnings of Thanos' point in Infinity War, there's something interesting going on there. Thanos perceives a problem where overpopulation is causing pain and suffering, and he has in fact enacted plans on many worlds where his obviously incredibly harsh solution of killing half the population allows the other half to live better. He has actual test cases where this has improved things for those still alive. Again, not saying it's the right plan. Even if you don't like it, even if you understandably come at his points saying that his points have no validity to them whatsoever, frankly, you are completely incorrect. He does have a point, but it is not a solution, as is done by many characters in this film, to just call him evil and say he doesn't understand love, he doesn't understand anything, because that is objectively untrue. Even in this movie, we see other characters specifically willing to sacrifice lives for the sake of the larger good. At the very least, Starkiller is willing to kill Gamora in this film to prevent Thanos from using the Infinity Stones to wipe out half of the universe. That is the same logic Thanos is using, just on a different scale. The exact same thing is happening with that witch girl and Vision. She actually kills Vision to prevent Thanos from getting his stone. It doesn't work out because Thanos subverts both of these things, but the point is both Starkiller and Witch Girl, I didn't catch her name, they're both willing to kill for the greater good, and that is exactly Thanos' argument. So to just say he's evil, and that anyone who would approach things like killing someone to save a larger group of people is always bad and evil, well, you've got to make some case that what these heroes did in this film is also evil, and I don't think that's accurate. I firmly believe that every sentient life is essentially sacred, and we have no right to harm it. But there are issues when it comes to practicality of maximizing how many people can survive in the universe. And Thanos is concerned himself with quality of life as well. So again, I'm not saying Thanos is perfect. I'm not saying I completely agree with the guy on everything. But the most interesting philosophical point to me is how some characters pretend like he's pure evil and yet do very, very similar actions in this film. And the way to stop Thanos, because they couldn't beat him with power, isn't to just call him evil and continually attack him verbally. It would be to rationalize with him, just like my hero Simone did in Gurren Lagann. Thanos is taking the Rossio approach of being overly oppressive, while a more mainstream approach would be the Kamina approach of just saying, every life is sacred, don't worry about it, when the reality is somewhere in the middle. That's the thing we need to be aiming for across the board. I love this movie, I love the deeper level issues presented in it, and I love the legitimately sympathetic depiction of Thanos that was presented, because I think it is actually helpful in our lives and in our political and interpersonal discussions as a way for us to better understand each other by observing how these characters are making mistakes when it comes to judging Thanos. Those emotional gut punches at the end of the film when we see our heroes, our friends die, especially the hardest hitting one with Peter Parker, Spider-Man, clinging to Tony Stark for life, saying he doesn't want to go. I mean, that hits hard, man. Nobody wants to see that. I just don't think it's helpful to just argue that Thanos is objectively evil across the board, because it's frankly not true. And the best way to reason with people is to legitimately understand their perspective so that they get that you're coming in good faith and you can try to change their mind. Because if you're trying to change Thanos' mind by force when he's got the Infinity Gauntlet, well, you're gonna be out of luck. I hope in the sequel, where all these characters come back to life, they use reason and debate Thanos on how he is incorrect in some aspects of his overly, weirdly utilitarian philosophy and make him come around to realizing how he could better use his powers. We'll see, man, because I'm gonna be checking out Thanos, the movie, Part 2. I love you, Thanos! I don't feel so good.
How ironic and stuff.
And with that, time for the P.O. Box.
Transition.
Hey everybody, you remember the drill, don't ya? Send the packages over blah to this address to my P.O. box, and I'm gonna open the cool ones on the show. Let's get into it. Number 1, here we go. This is from Tristan F, I'll say. All right, we've got a copy of Ink, a Jammin' Winans film. A dark, wondrous, poetic tale. Let's see here. Okay, looks like a movie about some stuff. As the light fades and the city goes to sleep, two forces emerge. They are invisible except for the power they exert over us in our sleep, battling for our souls through dreams. Okay, I've heard enough. Sounds interesting. A movie that I may or may not watch. Thanks, buddy.
Time to mix it up and go vertical. Turns out there was a note in there I totally missed, so let me just read the little short piece here. Hey Nate, I thought you might like the movie Ink. It's one of my mom's favorites. It has a lot of food for thought. You can see the big reveal coming a mile away. But I think it would still be something you're into. Maybe you can make a WIAGW about it soon. Yeah, don't hold your breath, buddy. Oh, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, you fedora-tipping atheist Ayn Rand wannabe faggot. Thanks.
Huh? Next up, from Austin. Okay, first of all, we've got a letter here. Let's take a look. Dearest best of the Guy household, I commend your performance of making these very extensive videos relating to a proper form of media, being anime and games. You are simply magnificent. Thanks, buddy. Recently, my friend went to Japan and brought back this tribute to my lord. Let's just say she had the greatest luck in the moment. Sorry, because she got so many things she couldn't include the box. Nico is one of my favorites, but it would be wasted on me, so I present to you, your waifu, Nico Robin. Oh, this is very exciting. I have also included a Japanese copy of Volume 1 of Komi-san wa Komyu Sho Desu. So brush up on your Jap to read, ya monkey. I highly recommend you read this. Our main characters are too simple and clean that I find myself blushing and giggling on the go. And while I'm talking about manga, Hatsukoi Zombie is pretty nice. When you were first streaming Castlevania, I mentioned a character named Elomo. You were confused and I decided to enlighten you now. I pose one question for you, however. What is an anime/manga that you are embarrassed to say you love, even if it's horrible? Green does that for me. It's stupid, but I can find some humor. From Anonymous. Didn't it say Austin on the box? Oops. A series I'm embarrassed to say I love. I don't think I'm really in the camp of somebody who likes things that they're embarrassed about. Like, you know, I like a lot of porn, like I'm not gonna talk about that. That could be possibly embarrassing. You know, everything about embarrassing is based on the context. Like, if I'm on here talking about which anime I like, I'm not gonna be shy about saying how much I like Bible Black, for example. Even though, like, it's not perfect, whatever, there's some stuff I really like about it.
My hot pecker.
You know, frankly, I don't have a good answer. I'm not sure there's much. So first of all, I've been tweeting about, what's her name? It's like Komyu-san wa Komyu blah blah des. I've been tweeting about how great the series is. The girl is super duper hot, and this is actually wonderful. I would love to spend some time reading this. This series is about how the main character girl is like super nervous all the time, but she comes off like an ice queen, and this causes shenanigans. It's very much a slice of life, like simple little series. But the art is so cute and adorable. Yeah, I had a big tweeting spree about it. You know, I just, this is great. Thank you so much. Now, on to the Nico Robin stuff. Oh, man. Here she is. My goodness, are her tits huge in this? I think this is like a bathing suit one, because she doesn't have a bottom. Damn. Okay, like this one is definitely like exaggerating the curviness, but that's cool, man. Damn. That's all there is to say. Thanks, buddy. Looking good. Hang on, I think this thing is like designed to like come off. Her top is like stretchy. Okay, I can't get all the way off, but check out them titties. Nice. And let's wrap up with this big boy right here. This has been sitting in front of me for months. I can't wait to open it. It's from apparently SZ. How exciting. All right, we have got, oh my God. It's a Putin standee! Well, shit, I spent years and months recruiting my boy Action Giraffe. Maybe that was unnecessary. What do you say, buddy?
I'm going to give him AIDS.
Well, gosh diddly darn it. There he is. Look at those two. Like peas in a pod.
Are you a fan of AIDS? 'Cause you're gonna be.
Alright, well, for the remainder of the episode, Mr. Putin will be helping us. Here we go. Okay, just for fun, we're gonna check in with our boy Stanford, who's sending another letter. It's been so long. How's he doing? I can't wait to find out. All right, to hell with this fucking thing. All right, what is going on in here? All right, we've got a scratch ticket as per usual. I lost as per usual. And here we go. Dear best guy ever, say hello to Jake and Logan Paul, or goodbye to the Ohio white boys. All right. Also, what is the last non-fiction book you read and finished? Philosophy and poetry don't count. Optional meme, how many genders are there? Not subscribed, Stanford. There are 5 stamps left. As many as there are stars in the sky. Non-fiction book that I read and finished. I literally don't remember. It's been a million years. Oh God, it's been months, but let's see if this is still happening. In the back it says, Dear Madam President, did he get the memo? Remember this number, 123199. I even put a sticky note for you. Remember, it will all come together. And there is a sticky note here. It says 123199, and even on the back of the envelope it said 123199. Stanford, buddy, what could this be? What elaborate game are you playing with us, my friend? Can't wait to find out. Hopefully he hasn't gotten bored and we'll finish up this meme for us. Let's move on to the fucking questions.
You know, it occurs to me I could use these transitions for propaganda. Eat your greens!
Hey everybody, get in there using that hashtag AskBGE. Unfortunately, at the moment, there's a hashtag AskBGE, which is asking beyond good and evil. Can we please stop this? I literally got here first. Fuck off, Beyond Good and Evil. Alright, but to hell with that. Yo, follow me at bestestguyever on Twitter, send questions with hashtag AskBGE, and here we go. Suicide Sausage asks, a weird utilitarianism query. If you are a doctor and a completely healthy man comes in for a checkup, meanwhile you have in the other room 5 critically ill patients that can be saved by killing the first guy and harvesting his organs, do you do it? You know, a lot of people bring that up when it comes to utilitarianism, but the thing is though, what I don't think they're accounting for is that as a guy who appreciates a lot of the utilitarian arguments, or utilitarianism arguments, I think that one human life has an inherent value that really can't be replicated by saving other people's lives by killing that person. I pretty strongly believe that. I think that an individual consciousness is almost infinitely valuable to that own person, certainly, if nobody else. So based on that, like I certainly wouldn't do something like that. So in that way, I'm different from somebody like Thanos. Could it be, if you're like the President of the United States, for example, and you've got like a situation where like your wife has been kidnapped by terrorists, and they're using her as like a shield to prevent you from like nuking them, and they're about to launch a nuke to like destroy America or something. Like, do you send in a bomb strike to kill them and your wife? In a situation like that, you kind of should actually do it because you're gonna save more lives by doing that than not. There are like outlier crazy examples where a situation like that could happen, but for most of us, like no. Again, I said like almost infinitely valuable a human life. There you go. At HNaskyGnork, I think I had that right, asks, do you think video games should get but more expensive? Or is it not the consumer's fault that publishers want to waste huge budget on ultra-realistic graphics over art direction? I'd like to hear your point of view. Well, Gnork, I think that the current situation we find ourselves in, where companies like Square Enix feel a compulsion to continually push things to be more and more visually pretty, comes from a complicated series of things. There is an inherent drive in every company to sell their products to as many people as possible. And I think companies these days have recognized that what sells to like the normos, which frankly are the biggest audience, the hardcore gaming audience, is very small. What those people like are like flash and style and things that can basically, like I said, just be impressive in a trailer, as opposed to something like a game with really impressive gameplay that takes you a long time to experience. Because again, most people don't play through a whole game, let alone like do all the 100% content you can do. So there is tons of incentive for every game company to just make their product like as attractive to the populace as possible, which a lot of the time just comes from like pushing the high definition graphics stuff. Whereas I would argue a game like Hollow Knight is a way better gaming package experience than something like, Breath of the Wild, like I said in that video, even though that is a technological marvel and deserves all the credit for that. When it comes to making the best game possible, there are tons of incentives to not actually strive for that, because the hardcore gamers that really care are not the largest share of the market that they can tap into. Like the Wii, for example, is an anomaly because the Wii wasn't the most graphically advanced system, but it way outsold its other 7th generation competitors just because it was so like accessible to the normos. So like that's a different way of reaching that same kind of like casual marketplace, which just is to say most people who don't spend a ton of time playing and dissecting games. Whereas like compared with that, like the PS3 and the Xbox, those are for like hardcore gamers, which doesn't appeal as much to just, you know, the average person out there. But the average person does see like just what's visually more impressive and they'll like be gravitating towards that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? I think I made my point. Moving on. Here's what I've been getting comments on for a while now. It's from Balkers Kababi asks, have you watched Hajimete no Gal dub? I think somebody compared it to the Bible Black's dub in a stream of yours, and you said you'd check it out. I'm watching it now, and I'd say it's pretty hilarious. It's ... Mimi. So ever since I made that video about how I was comparing Galco-chan to Hajimete no Gal, and I was saying how much better Galco was in like every single way, a lot of people have been putting forward that like, hey, best guy ever, you should check out the dub, because they actually like remix it and make it really funny. And they've improved it a lot since like the Japanese dub. They pulled what I understand to be something like that dub of Ghost Stories where they really memed it up to 11 just to make it like more funny than it originally was when it was first released. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of dubs to begin with, and I'm sure that there's plenty of merit to that it's fun and interesting. I'm not personally interested just because I know how shallow that series is, and it just doesn't appeal to me. Something like Galco is far more attractive. But to everyone out there who's appreciating the dub of Hajimete no Gal, you know, fantastic. Have a great time. I hope you enjoy yourself. I'm just personally not interested. Though I'll tell you, it is provocative that somebody compares it to the Bible Black dub, which is legendary.
My hot pecker.
And that's gonna do it, everybody. That's gonna wrap up this week's episode.
Sodium chloride. That's what I said. Sodium chloride.
You're supposed to push the buttons with the pictures of food on them.
Of WIAGW.
Just wanna play video games. You just wanna play video games. It's all the time and every
Gay.
Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, whatever the hell you want to do, that's cool. Patreon.com/bestguyever to support me doing this so I can go full-time content creator one of these days soon. Check out my podcast channel, The Procrastinators, link below. If you like One Piece, you should subscribe to The Podcast, the One Piece weekly review show I do with Hypocrite. It's a great time. Follow me at bestestguyever on Twitter and use those gosh dang #AskBGEs to send your questions so I can answer them, and send packages over bleh to my P.O. box to open. By the way, everyone, you may have already noticed, but I am no longer doing streaming on this channel, Best Guy Ever. Instead, I am on twitch.tv/definitelybestguyever. Link here, link in the description, links everywhere. I am currently doing a big old Diamond Nuzlocke Pokemon run. It is fucking intense, it is fucking hype. That's where I'm gonna be streaming from now on because YouTube is unreliable and fucking shit. So that's where I'm gonna be. It is a huge thing, people. You're gonna get involved in that shit. The streams are excellent. The streams are tight as fuck. You're gonna want to get in on this. Twitch.tv/definitelybestguyever. Blah! And one more thing for you. A big shout out to my buddy Jonathan for providing the soundtrack for today's WIAGW. Most of the tracks you heard came from his new mixtape Instaloops that he was kind enough to give to me to use for free. How about that shit? So if you liked what you heard, check out the links to his shit down in the description. There you go, everybody. Thanks for watching. It's great to be back with a WIAGW after so long, and I will hopefully see you next week. But I'm not making any hard promises. Take us out, boys!